This is a quick video to show you how to use Google Sheets to process data. So by the end of this video, you should know how to create means, medians, standard deviations, how to do a few correlations, and how to do two different types of plots in Google Sheets. I pick Google Sheets instead of Excel because if you use Google Sheets, you can just follow what I'm doing, and that way it's going to look exactly the same for you. You can use Excel if you want to, but there could be slight differences in the way it's done there. So to go to Google Sheets, it's really straightforward. You just type into the website field and you type in sheets.google.com. You go there, you will have to log in. So if you don't have a login with Google, you will have to register to get a login. Once you log in, you can use this as much as you want. It's free, it's really straightforward. Once you get here, you see all of the files you have at the bottom. So this is all the things that I did in the past. And you can see new spreadsheets at the top. So it gives you a few different options. But for this video, we'll just do a blank one first. And the other thing we have to do to set up is get the data. So to get the data, I'll just show you where the data is coming from, but you can actually use a link in the description below this video or on our course website page. The data is called the Better Life Index. So this is a set of measures that basically measure how people feel in different countries. And they do this every single year. So we will be using the one from last year. That's the latest one they have. And to get the raw data, if you just wanted to get it for some reason, you would go onto their website, OECD Better Life Index, and there's a link here called to download the index data. You click on it, it takes you to the index data section. So this is the data we will be using. And if you wanted to download this, you could actually export the data right here. So you have a few different export options if you wanted to download the data and do something else with it, then use it in Google Sheets. So for the purposes of this video, I'll actually already use the data from Google Sheets. What I did is I took this raw data and I put it into Google Sheets for you. So it's pretty straightforward. Kind of eliminates the first barrier for you. So this is the data here. Before we start using this data, I just want to tell you a few things about Google Sheets and how to use it. So this is a new spreadsheet. Most sheets and most spreadsheet software look similar. So you have cells and it's really straightforward. The cells, it kind of works like a text editor. So you can type anything into any cell and it stores the information. It's really straightforward. If I type in 1 plus 1, it stores 1 plus 1 because that's what I'm doing. If I type in 2 plus 1, it stores 2 plus 1. So it's in this way, it's really the same as a text editor. The interesting thing about a spreadsheet editor is that it can actually do calculations for you. So this is what makes it special. And that's what makes it useful for doing calculations and processing data. This is kind of an additional functionality over a text editor, right? And to access this, I type into any cell and I can type equals. And once I type equals, I'm actually telling it whatever I type after this, it's not text, it's a formula that you should calculate and return the result, right? So if I type in equals 1 plus 1, it's no longer text, but it knows that it's a formula and it should process it and give me the result. So if I do enter, it does 1 plus 1, which is 2. It's different to here because here I just said this is 1 plus 1, that's the text I want you to show. But here I'm actually doing equals 1 plus 1, which is quite different. It's telling you this is a formula and I want you to calculate it and return the result. If I click into the cell and I want to check the formula, it's actually at the top left. So if you have a look here in the top left, this is the formula that I typed in before. So actually the content of this cell is not 2, it's equals 1 plus 1, which is 2 at the end. So if you are sometimes not sure what the content of a cell is, you just click on it and you can have a look in the top left to see what the content is. Another interesting thing, so for this one, let's create some data for us. So this is 1, 4, and 5. What I can do is type equals and click on any cell. And it's gonna basically say the value of this cell is gonna equal to G7. So that's this one here. If I type in enter, this one is 1 because that's what I told it to be. So I told it this one should be equals G7. So G7 is 1. So this one is going to be 1. So in this case, I'm kind of creating a link between two different cells, right? So this one is always going to be the same as this one. If I change this one to 2, this one is also going to change because the value of this one is equals G7 and G7 is now 2. You can do something a bit more complex. So you could do equals this one here, G7 plus 4 here, G8, right? So this is gonna be 6. So what this is doing, if you have a look at the formula in the top left, it's doing equals G7. So it takes value from G7, which is going to be 2. And then it does plus G8. So it's taking 2 plus 4, and that's 6. Could do even more complicated things. So this is really nice because this is really straightforward, right? You always type in equals and then you type what the formula should be and it calculates the formula for you. So you can make it as complicated as you want. You could do G7 plus G8 into brackets, which means this is calculated first times this one, and that's 30, right? So it takes 2 plus 4, that's 6, times 5 is 30, and you can see the formula right here. So this is kind of nice. You can create formulas and it calculates those formulas for you, which is really straightforward. So I can delete it by dragging around it and pressing delete on the keyboard. I'll just make a bit more data for me to play around with. So I have some data for me right here. And the one last thing I want to show you before we actually dive deep into the real data is to show you how different sheets work. So at the moment, this is one spreadsheet, but it only has one page, right? We have all of these cells, but all of these cells are on one page. If I want to add a second page, I can have a look at the bottom, and I see I'm in sheet 1 at the moment, and I can actually add a second sheet, like a second page, into this same file. So to do that, I click the plus icon, and it creates a second sheet for me. I can give it a different name, and this is quite useful because actually what you usually want is to have your data in one sheet and have the results in the other sheet, which makes it a lot more straightforward. So I could call this results and double click this one and call it data. So now I have two sheets, and this makes it a lot cleaner, which means I don't have to edit this one at all. I'm just editing my results sheet. To edit the results sheet, it's the same thing. I double click into any cell, I type in equals, and now I might want to go to the data. So I type in equals here, but then I go down, click data, and you can see now I'm still editing the cell in results, and I can pick maybe this one from data plus this one, type in enter. It takes me back to my results sheet, and if I look at the formula, what it's doing is actually saying this one equals to A3, so cell A3 in the sheet called data. So if I go into data A3, it's number 2 plus whatever's in data A4, which is 3. So it's doing 2 plus 3 equals 5. So this is all the basics you need to know for processing the data. So to get to the actual data, you can follow the link in the description below, or just to copy the data yourself from the Better Life Index website. I have the data right here, so I already put the data into Google Sheets to kind of save you time. So this is the raw data. What I usually want to do is copy this so I don't mess this up in case I want to go back to this or fix it up for some reason. So to get an exact copy of this file into a new file, I just go into File, Make a Copy, and this lets you make a copy of this file into your own personal folder. You can give it a new name, so let's call this Practice Data. You could put it into a different folder, so if you have different folders in your drive, you can put it into any folder you want. You can decide to share it with some people or copy comments, which I don't need to do. I'll just click OK. And it copies the whole data into a new file that's called Practice Data. If I look at the top left, I can see this is Practice Data, and this is the raw data here. So the first thing we'll do is create a new sheet at the bottom, a second page for our results. It's the same thing. I look at the bottom, click plus. This adds a new sheet. It's called Sheet 4, and I'll just call it Results. So now I have two sheets. I have one with the Better Life Index and one with the results. So just looking at the Better Life Index data, how it works, it's quite straightforward. You have different rows for different countries, and each row is a single country, and columns are different measures for each country. So for this one, this is dwellings without basic facilities. So how many percentage in a country are houses that don't have access to basic facilities? You have some income, job statistics, community, education, stuff about the environment, engagement, health, life satisfaction, that's quite an important one, safety, and work-life balance. So this is the data that we have access to. We have different countries as well. And to make this analysis a bit more straightforward, I'll remove some of the countries at the end. So we have, if you look at the bottom of the sheet, we have 3 different countries that are not OECD countries. So we will remove these, and we also have the OECD total, which is actually the total value, kind of the mean of all the countries above. So we will want to remove this as well. So to remove these rows in their entirety, what I don't want to do, I don't want to just select this, because that would just be removing the content. What I want to is actually remove all of these rows. So to remove the rows, I click the numbers on the left. So I select all of these. I right click them. If you're using a Mac, a right click is clicking the touchpad with 2 fingers. And I can delete these rows. So delete rows 43 to 46. And you can see it removed those rows completely. And now I just have a straightforward data set that starts with Australia and ends with United States. So you should have this as well if you're following the video. What we want to do now, so let's say we want to do a mean of, let's pick a nice one. So let's pick one of the variables. So let's do jobs employment rate. So we have how many, actually let's do unemployment, long-term unemployment rate. So how many % of the people in the country are not employed in the long term? So this is long-term unemployment. And it's in percentage, and these are my values here. So let's go to the results, and to help me organize this better, I can type in what the result is going to be, and this is going to be the actual value of the result. So this is going to be my label in the A column, and in the B I'll have my results. So this one is going to be a mean. This is just a label for me, right? I could type in anything I want, it doesn't matter. Mean of unemployment. Kind of spills over into the other one, right? So I can hold it here, make this column bigger to make it just nicer to look at. So this is my label, and let's actually calculate the mean here. So the mean of the unemployment column, so I'll do equals, which is telling the system this is going to be a calculation. I go down to better life index. You can see I'm still editing my formula at the top. And what I want to do is a mean. So a mean is also called an average. So I start typing what calculation I want to do, and the system is giving me all of the possible options of different formulas it understands. So if I do average, so I can hover over average, and it tells me this is the numerical average value in a data set, ignoring text. So this is the one I want. This is my mean or average. Click on it once. And once I select the function, it tells me how the function should look like, right? So it's telling me you want to do the average, and to do the average, it should look like this. So it tells me I have to select a list of values, and it has to be in brackets. And if I want to have 2 different sets of values, I have to separate them by a comma. I just want to do a mean of 1 column. So at the moment, I just select 1 set of values. So you can see the example. So it should look something like this, but I'll only have the first part because I'm only interested in 1 column, not 2 columns. It tells you the summary, so it's telling you what it has to do, and it tells you the different parameters. So it tells you you have to include value 1. So this is the first value or a range to consider when calculating the average. And it tells you that the value 2 is optional, you don't have to do it, and it would be additional values to calculate. So all you have to know is that I'm doing the average, and this is what my formula would usually look like. So let me find my unemployment. Long-term unemployment is here. I'll select the data that I want to do the average of. So I hold here, just drag down, selecting the values for the average. And you can see my formula at the moment is like this. So it's saying I want to do the average of whatever's in better life index, starting with K8 to K42. So K8 is this value here, going all the way to K42. I can close the brackets and type in enter. And this gives me the mean unemployment rate. So this is back in my results sheet, mean unemployment, and this is the result. So you can see it's doing the average of whatever I put in the brackets. In this case, it's saying go to the Better Life Index sheet, which is at the bottom, and look for K8 to K42 and do an average of that. It's the same if you want to do any other function. So if I want to do a median, which is the middle value of, remember this is just a label for me, it doesn't really matter what I type in here, it's just text. But here I type in equals, go to Better Life Index, I want to do a median. So this lists the function, it tells you this is a median, I select median. Also it tells me how it should look like, the same thing, just select a list of values. So I want to do a median of long-term unemployment, hold down, drag here, click enter, and it gives me a median value. The last I want to do is a standard deviation of unemployment. It's gonna spill over, so I want to actually make it even bigger. Like this, click in here, equals, going to the Better Life Index. So I'm doing standard deviation, which is called stdev, standard deviation. Select this one. And again, I select a list of value 1. So it's gonna be my long-term unemployment. Select it like this, click enter, and I have my standard deviation. So now I have my mean of unemployment, median, and standard deviation of unemployment. It's pretty straightforward. The formulas are here, so it's standard deviation of whatever is in Better Life Index, starting with K8 to K42. It's pretty straightforward. The other thing I would like to do is a correlation. So correlation is telling you how much two variables are related. Before we start, let's just have a look at some variables that we might want to work with. So let's say we'll do long-term unemployment. Long-term unemployment, and let's correlate it with what do we want to know? Life satisfaction, right? So maybe people who are in countries where the unemployment is quite high, maybe people are less satisfied. So, sorry about that. Doesn't matter. I want life satisfaction, so I'll be using this one right here. Sorry, this is annoying. So I just what I just did is click the undo button right here, which undoes what you just did. So I went back to return the column to its original size by clicking the undo button. So I'll be correlating unemployment with life satisfaction. Back to results. So correlation of unemployment and life satisfaction. Click here, equals, correlation. So this is called correl. It's Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. So this returns the coefficient of the correlation, which tells you how related those two sets of variables are. So I'm picking correlation, and this is quite different. So this asks not for one range of data, but two different ranges of data, right? So it's telling me you have to pick data Y, type a comma, and pick data X. So data Y is the range representing the dependent data, and the other one is going to be representing the other variable. So I'll go to Better Life Index. I'll select long-term unemployment, which is here. I don't want to click enter just yet because I have to select the other variable. So I'll actually type in comma. And now it asks me for the other data, which is going to be my life satisfaction over here on the right. So I select my life satisfaction. Close the bracket. Type enter. And it gives me the correlation value. So just to go over the formula once more, it's equals correlation data Y, so this is the first data, so whatever is in Better Life Index K8 to K42, comma, and the other variable, which is the life satisfaction, so that's in Better Life Index W8 to W42. I click enter, and that's the result. So this is actually quite a strong negative correlation, which means the higher one variable is, the lower usually the other one is. It's 0.05, which is quite strong. It's a reasonable correlation. So the higher we are on unemployment, the lower the life satisfaction is, which makes quite a lot of sense. Let's do one more correlation to practice. So let's do a correlation of income and life satisfaction equals correlation. Select the first data, so that's gonna be my income. Let's do this one, picking the income in dollars, comma, pick the other one, which is gonna be the life satisfaction here. Close the bracket, enter, and this is also quite a strong correlation. So in countries that where the income is higher, life satisfaction also tends to be higher. Quite a strong positive correlation, 0.65. So now we can do a mean, median, standard deviation, and correlation. The other thing we want to do is create two graphs to show this data better. So to create figures or charts, it's quite straightforward. So what you do is you click where you want the chart to be, click insert, chart. This gives you a chart space. So this is where the chart is actually gonna be. I'll just put it right here. And at the moment there's no data in the chart because I did not give it any data. So what I want to do is, you can see it shows me the chart editor on the right, which is telling me what is actually gonna be in the chart, how it's gonna look, and I can exactly set up the chart the way I want in this chart editor. So the first thing we want to do is create a histogram. So a histogram tells me how one variable is spread out, how it looks. So I'll pick a histogram. So histogram is in the bottom, histogram chart, it's in the other section. So I'm picking a chart type, so I click which chart type I want, and I pick a histogram here, histogram chart. So you can see I have a histogram chart, and the data is actually not the correct data, so I want to tell it what the data is gonna be. I can click select data range. So this is asking me what's the data in the chart, right? What do I want to create a chart of? At the moment, it's just creating a chart of D8, which is an empty cell, which is not what I want to do. So I actually remove this. Click in here, what's the data? I go back to my Better Life index, and I select, let's do income, right? Let's try income. Select the income. So now I'm telling it my chart should be actually created from a data that's in Better Life index, starting with G8, which is here, all the way to G42. So I'm telling it create a chart out of these values. Click OK, and it creates a histogram for me, right? So you can see most countries are in the middle. It's almost like a normal distribution, and you can see how the values are spread out. What I would usually want to do is give it some sort of a title and tell me what the different axes are. So to do that, I can actually customize the graph. So if you look back into my chart editor on the right, you can see my chart is histogram chart. You can see the data, this is correct. And I can actually click customize, and this is basically telling it how the chart should look. So in chart style, I can give it different background colors if I wanted to make it really obnoxious, but I don't want to do that. I could actually go into chart and axis titles, pick a chart title. So this is a title for the whole chart, and give it some sort of a title. So this one would be, what would it be? A histogram of income, something like that. I actually want to center it, and I just noticed I removed the background. So I want to go back into chart style and actually put in white background like this. So going back into my chart and axis titles, you can see I have my chart title at the moment. And I can actually give it also axis titles, which is really useful. Whenever you create a chart, you want to tell the person reading the chart, you want to tell them what the different axes are, right? So they can understand what's going on. So my horizontal axis, that's the one at the bottom. So this is the income in dollars, I think. So let's go back to my Better Life index to better understand this. So this is the household net adjusted disposable income. So this is how much a household is making per year, I guess, in US dollars. So that I would want to say something like this in my chart, right? So if I go into my chart, click on the chart, double click, double click, takes me back to my chart editor, customize, go to axes, go to my horizontal axis, and this is gonna be household monthly income in dollars, something like that. Sorry, not monthly, it's annual income. So now I have my household annual income, and this is number of countries that are in this bracket. I don't have to. I don't want to do like add a description of the y-axis. I think it's not necessary in this case. Can click out. So this is a nice looking chart. It still has this one, which is kind of like a legend for the. It's called a legend. So if I double click on it. So this is a legend which describes what the different colors mean, but because there's only one color, it doesn't really make sense to have the legend here. So you would also find it in customized legend, and I just want to remove it because it doesn't make sense to have it here because there's only one color in the chart. So the position in this case could be set to none, which removes the legend from the chart, makes it a lot nicer. Let's say we want to add another chart, which is going to be a scatter plot. So a scatter plot shows us how two different variables interact with each other. So it's basically going to plot one variable on the y-axis and one on the x-axis. So let's do insert chart. I have a new chart field. I'll put it underneath this one. I select a chart type. So chart type for this one is going to be a scatter plot. So we have two different types of scatter charts. I'll just pick the first one. Data range. So let's select a data range. In this case, we want two different variables. So let's go back to the Better Life Index, and let's say we want to plot unemployment. And I can actually select the other variable by adding another range. So I'll select the other one. So unemployment against, let's say life satisfaction, because we have the correlation for that already. I select these two, I click OK. And you can see what it did for me. So it created a scatter chart, and it has an x-axis which has the k variable, which is going to be, in my case, the k is my unemployment. So on the horizontal axis, the x-axis, we have the unemployment, and on the y-axis we will have the w variable, which in this case is going to be the life satisfaction. Just so I don't forget, I'll add the labels to the axis now. So let's go to customize, horizontal axis, sorry, chart and axis titles, horizontal axis title, and this is my, is it unemployment? Yep. So long-term unemployment, add it here, and on the vertical axis, this is gonna be my life satisfaction. Enter, and now I have my two different labels. So the other thing we could want to do is, you can see it's not showing really nicely, right? Because the values are kind of really right to the edge. So what we actually want to do is think about this axis, and it starts with 5 to 7.5, and what I would actually like to do is gonna rescale this to start a bit lower and finish somewhere higher, right? So I can either go to my customize, go to my vertical axis, and I can set a minimum value and a maximum value. So a minimum value would be for me something like 4.5, and a maximum value would be, it's doing it automatically at the moment, which is quite nice, but I can set it manually as 8, something like that. I can do the same for my horizontal axis. So it actually starts with 0, which kind of makes sense, I guess. So maybe we can leave this one as it is. I could also change the way it looks. So what I could do is remove the grid lines. So the grid lines are the lines in the background. So I actually don't like there's too many lines. I could remove that if I wanted to. So I could do 2, 3, just see how many I enjoy, what looks nice. So you can play around with this to get the chart that looks nice for you. Still has a legend, so as I said with the previous chart, a legend is not really useful when you only have one set of values with one color. So let's remove the legend. Looks good. And let's add a chart label at the top. So that's chart and axis title, chart title, and we can call this unemployment and life satisfaction scatter plot. I can center it to make it a bit nicer, and this is gonna be my plot, which is quite nice. You could say what units this is in if you wanted to make it even more specific, but the units in this case, in my opinion, are not that needed. Actually, long-term unemployment is in percent, so we could maybe say this is percent just to make it a bit more straightforward. And this is gonna be my scatter plot. So this is pretty straightforward. I create a new chart, insert chart, and I select which chart type it's gonna be. Then I add the data, and then I make it prettier by adding the axis titles and chart titles. So now I have my two charts. I have my stats at the top. I know how to make the stats. I know how to link stats from this sheet to the other sheet, and I can actually add or subtract stats from one another if I wanted to. So whenever you're doing some data analysis, this is probably a lot more than you need. I think this is gonna cover you for like 90% of the data analysis you might want to do in the first year of your undergrad, because what you're gonna be doing is either a t-test or correlation. This one could do a t-test as well. Potentially you would do equals t-test and just pick two groups of data, and it would give you the probability of a t-test, which is quite nice. Means, medians, standard deviations, and correlations, and you know how to make two different plots, which is quite more than enough. This is Google Sheets. If you wanted to do a similar thing in Excel, you could do it in Excel if you wanted to. It would look a bit different depending on the type of Excel you're using. The main principles would be the same, but the way you do the charts, it would be slightly different depending on the version. So I think this is everything you need to know for using Google Sheets to process some basic data. If you have any questions, you can send me emails or type it into the comments below this video. Thanks a lot for watching. If you want to know how to use R, I'll make a separate video on how to use R and how to do the same thing in R, which is something we're going to be doing in class as well. So thanks a lot for listening. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send me an email or reach out in other ways.